Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a homeowner association fined me over $27,000 for a plot of illegal flowers I planted on my property and then put a lien on my house. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This is a little bit of a crazy one, so strap in and listen to how I almost lost my house and owned almost 30 grand in fines for flowers. I love flowers and I got that love from my grandma. When I got news that she had passed away, I wanted to do something special, so I dedicated a part of my property for a plot of her favorite flowers in the world, which are pansies. If you don't know these flowers, they have so many different colors, and I opted of course to plant her favorite, which had a mixture of orange and a very light purple. I loved it and it let me feel close while I was able to get things worked out with time off work to go and be with the rest of my family. I was gone for about a month and it was not an easy trip because I had to take an 8-hour flight to a different continent where most of my family, including my grandma, was living. I did not think anything else of my flowers since I had automatic sprinklers going and knew they would be fine. It turns out that while I was gone, the HOA was having a total field day and trying to destroy me. Just note that while they were doing what I'm about to tell you, I had no idea until I got back home a month later. The HOA had decided my flowers went against their rules because the flowers were multicolored. Despite people knowing why I planted them and that I was gone for a month, they left me fines every single day. I had never heard of this, and obviously if I knew this was a rule, I might have done something else or been sneaky and planted a smaller amount indoors. Anyway, after 3 weeks without me paying a fine, they decided to get a little bit more aggressive about it. I don't know how I was supposed to pay for fines that I did not even know existed, but if I try and figure out their logic, we might be here all day. Their next plan was to put a lien on my house. They were going to try and sell my house in order to get the money they'd been sending me fines for, while I was blissfully unaware thousands of miles away. The lien was actually going through, and this is the part of the story where I got back home and saw what was going on. They had padlocked my front door and I had no way to get inside. There was a note on the door about unpaid fines and that the house was going up for auction within the next month. I had no idea what the fines even were because they pushed them through the mail slot of the door that I could no longer even open. It took a few days of tracking people down to get answers and bring me up to speed about what was going on exactly. I went to the HOA and told them to take the lien off of my house because I was not even home and it was not fair. They basically told me to go shove it and I shouldn't have broken the rules if I didn't end up liking the consequences. Seriously, I have no idea what was wrong with these people. Part of me was so tired and mentally exhausted that I wanted to just quit. I knew my grandma would be disappointed if I did that though, so I decided I was going to fight back. Part of this whole thing meant that they had an open lawsuit against me, and finding out the date for that was also a pain because once again it was mailed and put through the door. At court is where things got a little crazy because I only had about 4 days to find a lawyer and try to get him up to speed about everything that was going on. He seemed a little stressed but willing to take my case and help me keep my house. The main plea on my side of it all was asking for the court to not let the HOA be this harsh because I was out of the country and unaware of what was going on. Their side basically said it did not matter if I was not in the country because I had planted the illegal flowers. They also wanted to sue me personally for more money, which is when things got a little bit complicated. I don't want to get into too much of the legal stuff here, so I will give you guys the brief version of what happened. In order for the HOA to personally sue me, part of what they had to do was prove that the flowers that I planted were illegal. That meant going through their oversized binder of rules and digging out the ones that specifically had to do with planting flowers. Reading it though, I noticed that what I planted did not seem to fall into any of these categories. It prohibited plants that were considered dangerous or harmful, like poison ivy, plants that would not be able to withstand the natural conditions, aka no planting a cactus because we get a lot of rain and it would probably die. And finally, flowers of certain colors were prohibited: black flowers, dark blue flowers, dark purple flowers, and for some reason, white flowers were all against the rules. While I did have purple on these flowers, it was nowhere close to dark. The HOA had basically lied about the color of my flowers to try and start all of this trouble. The thing was, in their official fines to me, they stated the issue was multicolored flowers were not allowed. This was not anywhere in the rules and made the entire case against me fall apart. The lien on my house was cancelled and the HOA was responsible for paying me the money that I would have paid each day that they illegally kept me from living in my own house. Still, I was really angry at what they did and felt like they were still getting off too easy. I mean, they almost caused me to be homeless because they didn't personally like the flowers that I planted on my property. Talk about petty. The neighbors that knew why I planted the flowers were also very angry at what the HOA had done. Once something like this happens, more people worry about their houses being the next target of the HOA. So they were all willing to help me put a little bit of revenge on the HOA. They decided they all wanted to plant pansy flowers too, and as long as they avoided the forbidden colors, they could get away with it. Dual-colored, even tri-colored pansies were able to be planted, and with all the color options the flowers can have, it really looked amazing. The HOA members were of course angry about it, which means I couldn't have been more pleased. I just wanted to plant some flowers in honor of my grandma, and at the end I got to see an entire neighborhood with them every time I drove down the streets. And yeah guys, that is probably the best outcome OP could have ever hoped for, and he definitely didn't expect this. What a beautiful ending and a beautiful way to spite the HOA. Anyway, let's continue with the next one. And the next one is titled Crazy Revenge. First, a bit of backstory to set the stage for this one. We will go way back first. High school sucked because I was a forever friend-zoned nerdy gamer guy, so I decided for my senior year I was going to get out of Ohio and study abroad. I slept through 3 years of German, so I applied to go to Germany. Ended up getting placed in Salzburg, Austria, which is the most beautiful place on earth I've been to date and need to visit again soon. The study abroad place had a few warnings for the next year before I left. Don't get in criminal trouble, don't get bad grades, and don't fall in love. My only danger with the first one was my lead foot. I totaled my first car but was allowed to drive my old man's 95 Ranger 4-cylinder 5-speed, and it barely got out of its own way. The second one I did enough to get C's and B's without caring much, and the third one OP. Through some teenage angsty drama that is a story for another time, I ended up meeting, dating, and falling madly in love with my now wife and mother of my daughter. I am 17, work full-time for summer. As stated, my old man lets me borrow his truck after I get off work. The rules are I have to be home by 10 weekdays and 11 on weekends. He justifies this that if I broke down or whatever, he would have to come to get me and fix the truck before he had to leave for work at 6. To my turbocharged hormones, this is tyranny. I spend every moment I'm not at work with my girlfriend because boobs and making out are awesome. But summer is quickly coming to an end and I have to leave the country. The last day before I have to leave, my old man eases the restriction and says I can have until midnight to be home and can be gone all day. We leave for New York City the next morning at 10. This is when I hatch a plan. I am leaving the country, so I cannot be given a worse curfew or extra chores, and my family would not piss away this study abroad money unless it was dire. I spend the whole day with my girlfriend and tell her to wait up after I leave. I have a surprise. I drive home and make it there at 11:58, creep into my room and spend the next hour aiming her. At 1, I roll the truck down the driveway and head back to her house, fall asleep with her in my arms. Life is perfect. I knew full good and damn well that I was breaking the intent but not the letter of the law. My argument was that my old man never said how early I could go to her house. I never woke up before noon, so it was just left unsaid. Perfect malicious compliance in my head. So I wake up at 9, just enough time for a teary goodbye and to haul ass home to head to New York City to fly to Vienna. But I look out the door and the truck is gone. I panic and realize I'm a dead man, my trip is off, I'm gonna have to work all the hours to pay my old man back for a stolen truck and the wasted trip. I'm never gonna have time to see my girlfriend and I'll never experience Europe like I wanted. I call my old man in this panic to hear him answer with deafening silence upon hearing the news. Now for my old man's pro-revenge, he heard me roll in just before midnight and went fully to sleep. He did not hear me roll out at 1 because years of playing Dungeons and Dragons taught me how to be a good sneaky archer type. But when he woke up at 6 and saw both the truck and I were gone, he knew there was only one place in the world I could possibly be. So he and my stepmom drove over to my girlfriend's house and with the spare key took the truck and went home. When he got my call a few hours later, he gave a full 30-second beat and then began yelling and told me I better find his damn truck or I was never gonna see the outside of my room again, much less my girlfriend or Austria. I am freaking out, running around her neighborhood asking if anyone had seen the truck to call the cops when he calls back 5 minutes later, laughing his butt off. He tells me he stole the truck and I was in deep trouble and I better be home fast. He makes me get a ride home with my girlfriend and her mom. When I arrive, he is standing in the driveway, smug as hell. I get berated for an entire 6-hour drive to New York about how big of a dumbass I am and leave the country as planned. It all works out in the end. I got the girl who I am happily with 17 years later and the truck until she died of Ohio rust 12 years later. And yeah guys, that was an absolutely perfect malicious compliance story, sprinkled with a little bit of revenge from his old man. The next one is titled Revenge on My Wife. My wife decided to take a week-long break about a month and a half ago. She said it had nothing to do with me, she just needed some time on her own. I let her go and encouraged her even, I only wanted what was best for her. The very next day, she started posting on social media, saying a bunch of things like, "I love the wrong person," and "you deserve someone that supports you," etc. Standing on the outside, it's easy to assume I did something wrong here. But honestly, I'm a romantic guy, I gave 110% into making sure the love of my life had everything. Here is the revenge bit. She asked for a divorce and has been making baseless lies about me to everyone I know over the last month and a half. Well, 2 weeks ago, she got laid off and has been collecting unemployment. I just finished filing a form to report her for fraud since she is working 2 jobs under the table that pay more than her previous job and collecting unemployment on top of it. I also made sure to get her to text me details about said jobs and screen cap them. Legally, I know I'm in the right, but it's still a bad vindictive thing to do. But honestly, I feel so good for screwing her over, knowing she won't be able to afford the house that she kicked me out of anymore. And wow guys, I gotta say, OP does not lose any time to get this revenge done. I am kind of impressed by this. Would you have done the same if you were in OP's position? Let us know in the comments. And the next one is titled Never Cut in Line. So for Christmas one year, my parents got us a season pass for 6 Flags. We used those passes often throughout the summer as a family and had an amazing time. It was one of these days that it happened. We waited in line for one of the more popular lines, which was at the 45-minute wait point. This was a relatively good for this ride as you can wait for up to an hour and a half at its busiest points. We got into line excited to share this ride with our dad, as it is one of the few he can ride as he has a bad back injury and that makes just walking around extremely painful at times. As we were in line laughing and making jokes while watching the little TVs they have at various points in the line, a group of people rudely cut in front of us and stood there. Our dad has a habit of not letting things slide, so we all braced for cover, waiting for our dad to go off on these people for cutting us when, to our surprise, he did not say anything. With confused looks, we turned to our dad, wondering why he had not told them off and to get behind us. He just looked at us with a look in his eyes saying, "Wait for it." We shrugged it off and continued our wait. We did not make it too far into the line at this point, so it was still about a 45-minute wait. As we got closer to the front of the line, we got more and more excited waiting to get on the ride with our dad and have a great time. The way the line is set up is before you get into the loading station, there is a two-way staircase that has the regular line on one side and the fast pass line on the other, and at the top of the stairs there are workers making sure the people in the fast pass line are supposed to be there. This is where my dad strikes. After waiting the 45 minutes in line behind the cutters, we stood at the top of the stairs and my dad signaled for a worker's attention. Once he received it, he pointed to the group that had cut us and calmly stated that they had cut us at the beginning of the line. The worker then politely told the group they would need to leave the line and go back to the beginning. They were pissed but followed the instructions and left the line. The worker thanked my father for informing them and suddenly pieces pushed into place in our mind. Our dad purposely waited until the very last minute to make them have to wait another 45 minutes, plus more time as the line was longer now that it was later in the day and more people arrived. I couldn't help but laugh as I watched them walk out of the line and back towards the beginning and just hope that they learned their lesson not to cut after that. And yeah guys, I'm pretty convinced that there is a special place in hell for people in general who cut in lines. I really hate that. If you have ever gotten any revenge on people that cut in lines, please let me know in the comments. The next story is titled "Rude to Me, Walk in the Rain." A little backstory/info, I work front desk at a hotel. Our hotel has two buildings. They are both the same, but one is the main building where breakfast, lobby and coffee etc. are, and we are a relatively small hotel, so we don't offer full service amenities, 24-hour maintenance, laundry, housekeeping etc. So from 6 PM to 8 AM there's just one person at the desk. Late one night it is raining and a woman walks in/half struggles with 3 big bags. I greet her and she kind of just looks at me, so I ask, "Checking in?" In a very snarky tone, "Obviously." Okay, sometimes people come in asking what time X closes or where Y is or other generic questions, but I let it slide because it is not a huge deal. I ask for her name and as I am about to check her in, she decides she needs to make a phone call right then and there. I ask for an ID and credit card and she holds up the "1 minute" sign with her finger accompanied with a loving glare to me. Sadly there was no one around, so I couldn't do anything but wait. However, her conversation was brief. She had to tell her friend it was raining and unsure about doing some activity tomorrow. I ask again for her ID and credit card and she sighs and half tosses it at me. By this time I am over her. I decide to put her in the furthest room from where we are, in the second building and in one of the worst rooms we have. Nothing major, just a connecting room facing the street. I give her info about the hotel and then where her room is. "I have to go back out in the rain. Don't you have a room in this building?" I had a few rooms left in the main building, but told her I unfortunately didn't. She then wanted help with her bags to her room and I again had to sadly tell her I had no one else on staff. She just glared and then shuffled back outside in the rain. 30 minutes later I get a call that she wants an extra blanket and pillow. I smile inwardly and tell her once again I'm the only one on the property, so she will have to come to me. She asked if I could bring it, and usually when it isn't busy I will gladly bring people items, but since I lost any desire to help her, I apologized and said I could not leave the desk. So she came in 10 minutes later, grabbed the blanket without a word and stalked off. She didn't have to walk too far since our buildings are 100 feet at most apart, but it was pouring and she definitely got some of it the few times going outside. And the next one is a bonus neighbor story. This story is about a couple that just moved in. The first day after they moved in, they called the cops on the elderly couple next door to put in a noise complaint for their TV being too loud. It was 8 PM on a Saturday and they hadn't even tried to knock on the couple's door to ask them to turn it down. They did this quite often. My mom was friends with the property manager and she told us that the dirtbags started calling her with noise complaints because the cops told them that if they called emergency services for a non-emergency again, they would be charged. So they started putting in complaints about everything. They were downstairs from us and if we so much as shifted in our beds at night, it got a complaint. That is not an exaggeration, they genuinely complained that my bed made too much noise. Complained if we got up at night to piss and that we made too much noise in the morning. They complained that our cat meowed too much. Complained that people drove through our parking lot outside of quiet hours. Complained that other people had lights on while they were trying to sleep. And complained that people talked to each other on the sidewalk. Also, they threatened to sue us because they said we were killing their dog. Mom fed the birds so we would have critters come up to our balcony and their dog would bark. Dog had a collapsing trachea because owners walked her with the leash on her collar and she pulled constantly, plus they'd do a hard stop on their retractable leash whenever she tried to make a break for freedom or chase a squirrel or whatever. But they said her barking at birds was what caused it, left a letter on our door about it. Mom went to go talk to them to try to work it out, found the husband first and he said he didn't think it was our responsibility and that his wife was the one who was upset. She found the wife next who told her the husband had written the letter and she didn't think it was our fault and actually she liked the birds. No lawsuit ever showed up and we kept feeding the birds. They left after 6 months and I hope they moved to a cabin in rural Alaska since that is the level of human association they wanted. Good luck putting in a noise complaint with the local moose.